Cameras rolling. Red tally light tucked behind a potted fern. 3 men, faces half-shadowed in a corner booth, lean forward with the kind of quiet glee only conspirators know. They've rehearsed their lines. They've timed the camera placements. Tonight is supposed to be a spectacle, a short clip that will hum with cheap laughter around the office for weeks. They don't know the whole thing is already wrong. Hunter Lawson stands by the sink at home, shirt sleeves rolled, the last pancake flip landing with a soft sigh against the porcelain plate. Flour dusted on his forearm looks like frost. June, 7, sits at the table with her back to him, a volcano-shaped backpack slumped beside her chair, the plastic model's red-hot crater glittering under the kitchen light. She is earnest in her breakfast ritual, sticking a fork into the pancake as if it were a precious fossil, and she talks across the table as if she is narrating a documentary. "You have to get the lava right, Dad, not too runny, like it's stuck, but then it explodes." She demonstrates with her hands, a little eruption of fingers that splatter syrup. Hunter watches and smiles the way a man has learned to smile small, steady things back into life. He flips another pancake, timing it, practicing a control he hasn't always felt, since the year that rewrote his calendar. He learned to be measured. He learned to pack lunches with notes. He learned to answer the questions teachers sometimes call him about how June is doing, about whether she's sleeping, whether he's sleeping. But there are things routine won't fix. Grief is not a dish you can flip back to golden. "You ready?" he asks, wiping his hands on a towel. His voice is calm. He pins a hair back from his forehead without thinking, an old habit from a life that used to include someone doing the same for him. June nods, mouth smeared with syrup. She points at his wristwatch. "We need to go, or your tie will be sad." Hunter hasn't taught June to sign all the way. She's still 7, and the world of words is wide for her. But she knows the basics from stories about his mother. She walks over and taps the inside of his wrist twice, her tiny imitation of a sign she's seen him use when he talks about time. And then, with the proud solemnity only a child can give, she claps her small hands and signs the one she's used since she was 3 when he leaves for work. Signs. "Be safe." He lowers himself to her height and returns it, slow and deliberate, the motion like a ritual. The movement is a language and a promise both. His hands, broad, knuckled, steady, carry the weight of years that taught him how to sign. Words that lived in the corners of his life ever since his mother taught him how to make language visible in movement. She would sit in the living room with knitting needles and a dictionary, correcting the curve of his thumb until his hand looked like the letters of a secret he could pass on. He'd learned names of colors and cookies and how to ask for patience. He'd learned how to be present in the ways that matter. "Be brave," June whispers as he pushes open the door. He bristles at the word in his chest, brave, as if it were a thing he might borrow for a single evening. He has been brave in the way he certifies June's life as steady, brave in all the ways that don't make the news. Dating is different. Dating feels raw because it's the place where he measures the old promise of intimacy against the new geography of a life with a child attached. He had promised himself it would be practical at first, no one-night stumbles, nothing theatrical. But tonight's date is his first proper attempt at the edge of ordinary romance since the year the hospital room became the new shape of their weekends. In the office a few blocks away, Derek, Greg, and Tim sit with the grin that comes before a joke turns cruel. They call themselves pranksters out of intimacy and familiarity, colleagues. They called Hunter the Golden Boy because he got things right. He mediated HR spats, brought in donuts for birthdays, took the extra clients quietly. They decided, between their coffee and their midday irritation at someone else getting the promotion, to remind the office that Hunter was still human. The plan is simple and, to them, comic in its purity. Book him a blind date with a woman who is deaf, and record his reaction. They have planted a camera so close it will see the creases form in Hunter's forehead. They will watch the moment he fails. That's the hook, they say, the punchline. They do not think of the person seated across from him as a person. Derek's fingers drum the wood of the table. When he realizes she can't hear him, he says, "It'll be great," the look on his face. Greg smiles thinly. It's not like he's a monster, just afraid, only human. That's the clip. They don't want to imagine what it will feel like to be the person who set a trap for a man trying to be kind. Empathy is optional in a room full of men telling themselves a story where the sting is only a joke. Hunter arrives early. He sits at the table near the window in the Riverside Grill, a low-lit place that favors booths and warm bread. He chooses a simple navy shirt, the hem still smelling faintly of the laundry powder June insists smells like adventure. He checks his reflection in a spoon, a small gesture to steady himself, and smooths his hands on his jeans. Left to worry in the quiet between now and when the woman arrives, he rehearses nothing at all, because rehearsed conversation feels like an inauthentic script. He wants honest sentences. He wants to be able to look at someone and speak the truth of his life in the way he knows how. The restaurant smells like citrus oil, butter, and slow garlic. A waitress delivers a glass of tap water so cold it fogs the table. A couple nearby leans into laughter that sounds accidental and natural. The corner booth, 2 tables over, where the men have settled, is a different temperature, charged, patient, observant. Their eyes are small cameras. They want spectacle. When Megan Smith walks through the door, the room measures her in the softest of ways. She carries herself like someone used to measuring a room by light, by vibration. Her jacket is a muted green, her hair gathered into an efficient knot, elbows bare as if readiness is a garment she wears all the time. There is a cautious grace in the way she scans the room, lips moving in the unconscious shaping of words as she reads them, eyes catching the arc of people's mouths for the short, sharp data needed to place them. She's had times in her life where a quiet bar is more honest than a crowded one. Tonight, she is measured, deliberate, not wearing a face prepared for pity or for a man to be impressed by her resilience. She is not a lesson. She is a person who writes for a living, who has been on 17 bad blind dates and can list them like weather events: drizzle, storm, heat wave. She has learned to be prepared. Hunter sees her, and the world narrows. Not because he's searching for spectacle, but because the motion of her hands reads like a familiar book. He notices, in an instant older than an instant, that she is deaf. It's the tilt of her chin, the careful way she carries her eyes, the manner in which she signs subtly to the hostess when she asks about the wait. The corner booth waits for his reaction, the way a held breath waits for a tooth to fall. You think he'll bail? That's what they hoped. Hunter doesn't. He rises and walks over, knot of his tie loosened just enough to look human. He offers his hand, then remembers and keeps it down. He knows the etiquette. Put your hands where they belong. Let language be language. He smiles, and in that smile, there is all the small kindness he intends to hold like a shield. Megan's eyes lift, the faint ridges around them softening. She smiles back, a cautious, honest thing. They make exchange, names, where they work, small conversational scaffolding. He seats himself. He listens to the sound of her hands resting on the table, the small book she carries, newsprint edges of a freelance assignment peeking out. In his peripheral, the corner booth adjusts their angles in anticipation, camera lenses whispering. The first bridge between them is a movement so clean and unremarkable that the men at the booth choke a little at the loss of their script. Hunter's hands move, not showy, but sure. He frames the sentence with his palms, his thumbs pointing and then closing, the grammar of decades practiced like a tool. His fingers open and close with a cadence that matches the steadiness in his voice, which he keeps low but descriptive, because he knows there are people who read lips sometimes, and because he knows language is a landscape where you want to meet people halfway. "Hi, I'm Hunter," he says, the motion fluid, the fingertips of his right hand brushing his chest before pointing gently at her as he introduces himself. Megan's shoulders, held for a fraction of a second, like the tightness of a drawn bowstring, relax. Her mouth lifts in a shape that is a laugh without sound, and then she signs back. Small, meticulous signs. "Megan." Her hands fold in, the phrase quick and precise, eyes locking with his. The restaurant, for a suspended moment, becomes a place that knows language without sound. She watches him, the way a professional does, judging competence not by flash but by clarity. Hunter's signing is not theater. Lines flow from muscle memory. There is no clumsy fumble. His hands carry the cadence of a man who learned ASL from sitting with his mother at a kitchen table and refusing to believe that being silent made someone invisible. There is tenderness beneath his grammar, an echo of the woman who once taught him how to ask for tea without speaking. Megan reads it. She looks at the formation of his signs as someone reading the first page of a book she had been curious about. They order food. Hunter's voice translates the menu as Megan watches his lips and signs in reply, creating a duet of speech and movement. He tells the server what she wants, her mouth shaping words to be understood, and then he signs back the options. It is small choreography. She signs, he repeats aloud in a gentle baritone. He signs, she nods. The waitress takes their order with a smile, not sure whether to ask which of them will pay or assume the right thing. It feels, in that moment, intimate and unremarkable all at once. The documentary of their life, two people making choices together, unfolds in a language that the corner booth had not planned for. Around them, people look away, not out of rudeness, but because the tenderness of eyes meeting without sound yields something like reverence in public life. The corner booth, camera lenses catching the slow close of fingertips, shifts awkwardly. There is an audible recalibration in the men's faces, amusement curdling into uncertainty. But then he did something nobody expected. The narrator offers, quiet. The spoken aside, a small ripple in the room. Hunter leans forward and signs something small and tender. Signs, "You look tired." And his expression holds still, attentive, his brows knitting in a way that is not pity. Megan's response is a micro-movement, a brief exhale that makes her shoulders drop. She signs back in a phrase that is a little clipped, careful as a hinge. Signs, "It's been a week." She doesn't elaborate at first. That's guardedness, not coldness. He doesn't pry. He tells her a small thing instead. A story about a burned cookie his mother once made that never left the kitchen. A domestic failure that softened the world for him. He signs it with the ease of someone telling a memory. Palms open, fingers folding to indicate the way the cookie crumbled. Megan watches his hands shape the anecdote. As he speaks aloud the little details, she signs with him, filling in the gaps, the way people comfortable with each other often do, by finishing the edges of a narrative. The story is small and safe, and it lands between them like a shared plate of food. His hands find the shapes for grief, a careful set of motions that speak of absence. He doesn't turn grief into a spectacle. He shows it in how he pauses, in the quiet of his shoulders, the way his eyes look for June in the corner of his mind. Megan watches, not as someone who needs to fix him, but as someone who has her own inventory of losses. She signs back a sentence that is not pity, but recognition. "I know those rooms." And then she tucks the rest of the meaning into the curve of her face, into a tiny nod that says, "I have been there too." This is not a moment of rescue. It is not a performance. It is a human exchange. Two adults finding a language for the particular shape of their lives. The corner booth, still watching, inches toward discomfort. Their planned punchline is dissolving into the very thing that renders their joke irrelevant: genuine human connection. The date flows. They trade small humiliations and small victories. Megan tells, by sign and translation, about being a freelance writer and the stubborn little places that keep her working late into night. She signs the letters of her favorite assignment, the way a word can feel like the right shoe. Hunter nods, signing back his admiration and asking about the practicalities, not as a flinch into pity, but as a curator of respect. He asks about the boundary between the work she loves and the tasks he hates. She replies with a shrug and a flick of her wrist that suggests both appropriation and acceptance. He tells her about therapy sessions he runs, about listening to people stitch their own lives back together. And she asks in a sign that is both plainly curious and genuine. Signs, does it get easier? Hunter's hands pause. He hears June's small voice in his head and the steadying lessons his mother taught him. Take the question seriously. He signs slowly. Signs, not simple, but yes, sometimes, little by little. He says it aloud too, a habit of translation and courtesy, his voice a low thread beneath the music of their hands. Megan's face softens in a way that feels like thawing. Later, they will both say, in ways that don't sound like the men in the corner booth expect, that the evening felt less like a date and more like a discovery. Meanwhile, the booth's whispers change tone from giddy to uneasy. Derek whispers into the mic they had wired into their phones, "Come on, say something." But the laughter dies at the edges. The camera, small and clinical, captures the intimacy it was meant to exploit. It records the contour of Megan's sleeve, the way Hunter's thumb taps gently against his own knuckle when he thinks, the way June's volcano toy in his memory gets mentioned and then reshaped into a new anecdote the two laugh about. The footage will be sharp and cold. The feelings are messy and humane. A waitress passes by and pauses, not wanting to eavesdrop, but alert enough to feel the electricity. She notices Hunter signing across the table and thinks of a friend who knows ASL. She smiles, eyes crinkling. Around them, people go back to their lives. Only the corner booth remains suspended, the men caught in a moment their joke cannot populate. At one point, Megan pauses mid-sign, her hand frozen as if to check the air. She looks not at Hunter's mouth, but at the window, as if recalibrating the room. Hunter follows her gaze, and for a breath, they are both looking through the glass at the small flags on the riverside that do nothing. He signs casually, signs, "You okay?" And she gives him a thumbs up that is both performance and truth. It would have been easy for both of them to let the evening fold here, to retreat into politeness. Instead, they keep talking. They trade secrets like bread. Megan admits she is picky about blind dates because of the accumulation of small indignities. Men who speak to her more loudly than kindly. Men who assume. Her hands describe the list. Condescension, surprise turned into a performance, pity disguised as sympathy. Hunter nods, angry on her behalf in the patient way a good listener can be. He tells her about a lullaby his wife used to sing, the way it would break his anger into manageable pieces. His signing is honest, the grammar of memory shifting comfortably between past and present. It reveals a man who is not trying to be impressive, only real. And then, as if the night needed one more pivot, one more small crack to reveal whether the world is generous or petty, Derek's phone buzzes with a message. The men in the booth glance at the screen because they cannot help themselves. They have already imagined the reactions they will email around. Greg presses record again because the footage never seems enough in their imagination. They lean in, the way people lean into a train wreck. They are waiting for the punchline that never arrives. Hunter notices, finally. Not the phones, not the cameras. He notices the energy of the corner booth. There is a small thing that gives them away. A way they hold their breath. a tension in their shoulders that does not belong to patrons who are quietly watching. The light behind the plant catches and glows. He feels a tug in his gut, a sense that something in the room is arranged for them, not with them. He closes his hands in his lap for a beat and pulls a small smile around his mouth that means, give them the space to be human. You can feel your heart hitch here, the narrator says softly, because you know a choice is coming that will tell you who someone is. Hunter could have left. It would have been simple. He could have stood, made an excuse about a child or a meeting, and let the corner booth have their punchline. He could have bought himself anonymity and the quiet peace of not being exploited. Those things would have been justified and neat and easy. Instead, he leans forward again. His fingers find a shape that invites rather than interrogates. He signs a small joke. His hands bounce slightly, easing the air. Megan laughs without sound and signs back, a sentence that is a soft concession. Signs, "Okay, you passed the test." For three men in a booth, the idea of a test is delicious. They grin like kids at the end of a plot. What they haven't accounted for is that the real test is not whether Hunter will prove himself clever or performative. The real test is whether he will treat a person, Megan, as a person or as an object of spectacle. At the end of the appetizer course, Hunter reaches, almost as if by habit, toward his pocket and draws out a business card, folding it slowly, not to be fussy, but to facilitate communication. He slides it across with a smile that says, "I want to know more about you because you are not a curiosity." Megan takes it, fingers brushing the print. She reads his name, the therapist's title, the city. She signs and then, for the first time, presses both hands to the table and laughs, a widely framed expression that brightens her face. She signs, "You're a liar." And then she signs the explanation with relish, meaning, "You told a good story about cookies and it was too sweet to be true." They both chuckle, the kind of laugh that is both relief and permission. The men in the corner booth shift uncomfortably in their seats. Their recording equipment hums quietly. They had wanted humiliation and got instead something they don't know how to classify. For the first time that evening, discomfort washes over them like cold water. It's not the feeling they planned. As the main course arrives, a skillet that steams and hisses, garlic and rosemary lifting into the air, Hunter signs something private. Signs, "June likes volcanoes." His hands shape the model in little movements, both of them adding the small details that feel like a trust. Megan's hands make a delighted small explosion to match June's plastic eruption. She signs back. Signs, "Can I meet her?" The question is a real one, not the flirty kind, but the truth-testing kind. Her face is open. There is curiosity and a cautious hope. Hunter's chest aches. He thinks about June alone in the living room with her volcano model, about the way she imitates people to test the world's reactions. He thinks about the promises he has to keep, practical promises, stubborn promises. He thinks about the small household rituals that are safety. He could say no. He could say not yet. He could keep himself and his daughter safe from an unknown that might be blessed or might be a complication. He signs back slowly. Signs, "Yes, soon." When it feels right. The corner booth's faces fold, a little, into something like disappointment. The men whisper judgment about sentimentality. They had expected to witness a punchline. Instead, they are watching the formation of something they cannot reduce to a meme. Outside, the river moves in a patient, indifferent sweep. Inside, plates clink and the restaurant carries on. Hunter and Megan continue to trade stories and small silences that are full of meaning. The camera in the corner keeps taking the footage the men plan to weaponize. It does not capture the softness in Hunter's hands, the particular angle of Megan's smile when she really believes a joke, the exact shade of light that lands on June's crumpling volcano backpack in Hunter's memory. Technology is precise but not omniscient in the ways that matter. It catches expressions but not the responsibilities that glide between them like soft smoke. At some point, as the evening folds into the deeper cushions of night, there is a shift, a microscopic change in energy, and Hunter feels it come through his fingertips. The corner booth has become too quiet. Derek's cough is a little too deliberate. Greg's fingers are flattened against his thigh. Tim looks like a man who has watched a film he does not understand. Hunter's hands pause mid-gesture. His thumb brushes the table. He looks toward the corner where the men sit, and then back at Megan, whose fingers are resting on the napkin like a small calm. For a second, the room is wider than a trap and than a date. It contains potential for harm and for care. He signs. Is someone watching us? Megan looks to him, then past him. She reads the angle of the room and follows his line of sight to the plant. When her eyes register the small, glossy shape of a lens, a flashless light in a place that is supposed to be inconspicuous, her face changes. Not because she is deaf and cannot hear the city swallow itself, but because someone has manipulated the room without her consent. Hurt crosses her expression like a stain. The men at the booth, hearing nothing but imagining everything, fold inward. Derek's mouth forms an apology before anyone speaks, like a reflex. Hunter's fingers shape a sign that is not practiced. We need to talk. And then he looks at Megan with a gravity that is adult and protective. He has choices: to stand up and reveal them, to walk away, to let dignity be preserved in silence. The table between them holds warmth and garlic and the seasons of possibility. Outside the window, a streetlight flickers, and the river keeps moving. In the next breath, Hunter reaches out lightly, and his palm covers Megan's hand, not to claim, but to connect. The movement is small. It is also deliberate. It says, "I will not let you be the butt of someone's joke." The corner booth shifts. The men are no longer laughing. One of them, Greg, pushes his chair back a little, the squeak like a confession. Hunter's fingers shape a sign that is not practiced. We need to talk. And then he looks at Megan with a gravity that is adult and protective. He has choices: to stand up and reveal them, to walk away, to let dignity be preserved in silence. The table between them holds warmth and garlic and the seasons of possibility. Outside the window, a streetlight flickers, and the river keeps moving. In the next breath, Hunter reaches out lightly, and his palm covers Megan's hand, not to claim, but to connect. The movement is small. It is also deliberate. It says, "I will not let you be the butt of someone's joke." The corner booth shifts. The men are no longer laughing. One of them, Greg, pushes his chair back a little, the squeak like a confession. The camera continues to record, impartial and bright-eyed, but a line has been crossed. The prank's architecture is exposed in the slow human gravity of two people who chose each other's dignity over someone else's spectacle. You can feel, the narrator murmurs, that the rest of the night will not belong to the prank. It will belong to the people who live through it. At the edge of that feeling, somewhere between shock and decision, Hunter looks at the men in the corner. He stands. His movement is steady, not theater. He does not shout. He does not make a scene. He walks toward them, and the restaurant waits to see what a person with a moral spine does when the comedy has been arranged to wound. The men try to speak before he reaches them, words fumbling for justification. Derek's apology is thin at first. Hunter's hand is on the back of his chair, a small hold that keeps him from collapsing into a rage he would rather not let sit inside June's ears. He is a man who has been taught to bear his grief quietly, to choose the battles that will not bleed his child. But tonight, there is something else, a catalyzing clarity that says some lines are not crossed. He decides, in the one movement that will reroute the evening, not to let the story end in humiliation. He tells them, in quiet but firm words, that they will not share the video. He tells them that pranks that target humanity are not jokes. He demands an apology. None of this will be a declaration on television. It is a small domestic accountability in a civic language. No, this is not okay. Their faces, which earlier were lit by the idea of a joke, contract. The camera continues to blink. The men reach for the excuse of light-hearted, but the phrase is a thin thing. Megan watches all of this with a sort of terrible, polite calm that does not belong to someone who has been reduced. Her hand lies in Hunter's hand like a small harbor. She signs something that reads like a simple command. Signs. Stop. Hunter nods, at once to the men and to her. He returns to the table and sits, the place between them now a kind of claimed territory. The dinner continues, but it is different now. No longer naive, no longer a test. The men will have to decide, later, whether a prank is worth their dignity. Outside, the river keeps moving. Inside, the appetizer plates are cleared and replaced with the promise of dessert. The evening is no longer merely a date. It is a small public correction. It is a moment that tells a story about who we are willing to be when we think no one is looking. But not everything is resolved. The camera in the corner still glows. The men in the booth still speak in low tones, which the restaurant walls do not swallow. The question of consequences has been set in motion. Hunter has made a choice, and that choice will ripple. He knows this. He has seen what choices can become, how a small kindness can bloom or wither depending on whether others honor it. But not everything is resolved. The camera in the corner still glows. The men in the booth still speak in low tones, which the restaurant walls do not swallow. The question of consequences has been set in motion. Hunter has made a choice, and that choice will ripple. He knows this. He has seen what choices can become, how a small kindness can bloom or wither depending on whether others honor it. For now, he returns to Megan. He signs lightly, an attempt at normalcy. Sorry about that. His face holds no triumph. It holds apology and ownership for being put in the middle, though he did not invite it. Megan squeezes his hand and signs back, the word both gentle and sharp. Thank you. As dessert arrives, chocolate something that makes both of them laugh at the idea of being adults who order things called indulgence. The men in the corner booth record their own remorse in a way the camera cannot celebrate. They whisper about a phone call to the CFO, or maybe an HR conversation, as if consequences can be scheduled like appointments. They have already started writing the outline of apology emails. The night has shifted. It is not finished. It will not neat. Hunter knows that some things will have to be explained to June, explained with care and language suitable for a 7-year-old who knows what a volcano looks like when it is honest. He knows that the men in the booth will feel embarrassed and perhaps disciplined in some way. But the larger arc, whether two people who stumble into each other by happenstance, will still erode unwritten. Megan signs quickly, a question that is like a seed. Signs. Can we meet June? Her eyes in the half-light hold something that is nearly a plea. Hunter exhales. He thinks about his daughter waiting at home, about the ways new people can become good or complicated in his child's life. He thinks about the responsibility of letting someone else into their house. He signs back, and the words are both careful and hopeful. Yes, soon. Outside, the river is patient. Inside, the camera keeps recording. The men in the corner shift, wrestling with what they have done. The night is heavier now, and the stakes are domestic and public at once. And then Hunter does a thing that some might call brave and others might call inevitable. He leans across the table, palms open, and signs, the movement gentle and deliberate. Signs. If we meet, you teach June a sign that's special. His face lights with the private joke in his eyes. Megan's response is immediate, a bright signature of mischief. She signs, deal, volcano. She punctuates it with a little explosion of her fingers that makes Hunter laugh, really laugh, and for a second the whole room softens. as if the world cannot argue with the small joy of two people agreeing on a stupid, perfect thing. Across the room, the corner booth records every second. The men whisper. Derek's jaw tightens. Greg fumbles for the right tone. Tim looks like a man who suddenly knows he has crossed something he can't pretend away. The camera keeps its mechanical promise. It records, always impartial. But footage cannot decide the moral shape of a story. People do. At the edge of the night, before desserts are fully tasted, Hunter stands to leave with a flinty determination. He tells Megan he will call her, that they will arrange a time. She nods and signs the address slowly so he can read it later, her hand precise, as if carefully tying a knot. He walks her to the door. He does not want the evening to end in an argument or shame. He wants the date to be what it became, a small, unabashed beginning. When he reaches the corner booth on his way out, he does not shout. He does not call the men names. He speaks in the exact measured tone of someone who knows the cost of escalation. He tells them again, no. He asks them, plainly, why? What made this idea seem okay? He listens to their stammered explanations. Stress, boredom, the need for a laugh. He does not excuse them. Inside him is a tenderness for his daughter, but also a stubborn refusal to let people be used as punchlines. He tells them there will be consequences. Nothing dramatic, but there will be accountability. He will speak with HR. He will ask the CFO for a conversation. He will not let this be a footnote in someone's feed. As he steps back into the night, he feels the press of an unfinished story like a tide. He has said enough to move the ark, but not enough to tidy it. The men will have to answer for their choices. Megan will have to decide whether she wants to meet his daughter. Hunter will have to explain the situation to June without making her feel like she is a prize. The camera in the corner will continue to hold images that, if released, would mean different things. Choices rumble like small earthquakes beneath the surface. On the sidewalk, the air is cold enough to make breath a visible thing. Hunter breathes out and for the first time in 4 years feels an uncomplicated lightness, the kind of thing that comes from standing up for someone, in the middle of doing the right thing. He keeps thinking about the shape of June's hands, about the volcano's crater, about the way Megan's fingers had laughed. He knows, as any parent knows, that nothing is guaranteed. He also knows that the night has given them something precious, a beginning that was not engineered by cruelty. And yet, the night is not over. Inside the restaurant, a small, glossy-eyed camera blinks. The men in the corner booth have begun to rehearse apologies they imagine will be accepted. Outside, Hunter walks home with a pocket of warmth and a plan to tell June the truth in the kindest possible terms. The future, in that moment, is a place filled with possibilities, good and complicated. He opens his front door to the smell of pancakes and the low sound of a cartoon he and June sometimes watch together. June runs up and drops the volcano model into his lap, still sticky with syrup and still gleaming with the same imagined lava she has been carrying around like a talisman. "Did it go okay?" she asks. The question not testing, but curious. A child's hope folded into a small carefulness. Hunter sits on the couch and looks at her, at the slanted light on her hair, at the way she expects answers in simple, honest terms. He signs a small phrase he hears in his head like a melody. Signs, "I met someone." He smiles and then speaks to her, because she can hear his voice, and his voice is also home. He tells her, simply, he met someone and she might be coming over when it feels right. June's eyes widen. She signs back as if taking a solemn oath. Signs, "Volcano?" Hunter laughs, and the laugh is warm enough to melt small anxieties. He scoops her into his lap, and together they make a little eruption with their hands. Somewhere in the life of a man who has learned how to steady small things, this is not a minor moment. It is the scaffolding of a hope. But there are edges to the hope. The camera in the corner has captured the evening. The men in the booth have to answer for their choice. Hunter has to navigate the messy world of HR and apology. Megan has to decide whether to accept the offer of meeting his daughter and whether trust can grow from a night that began as a trap. And there is a larger question that hums under it all like a tuning fork. Can something humane survive an act designed to humiliate? He tucks June into bed that night, whispering a story about a foolish cookie and a brave mama who taught him how to sign. He watches as his daughter's eyes droop, the small volcano toy perched on the nightstand catching the last of the light. He thinks of Megan across town, of the soft eloquence in her hands, and of how fragile beginnings can be. He thinks about the corner booth and the men trying to make a joke out of people's lives. He thinks about the choice he made to stand up, not for himself, but for someone else. He does not yet know what will happen tomorrow, if the video will stay private, if apologies will be adequate, if Megan will agree to meet June in person. He only knows that he walked into a night that could have been an attack and chose instead to turn it into a place where two people were allowed to be themselves. That choice feels, in the marrow of him, like an offering. The river slides past in the dark. The city settles. The camera sits and waits. And somewhere, the outline of consequences grows, patient and inevitable, like the tide drawing to meet the shore. The next morning will bring phone calls, possibly the CFO's quiet reprimand, and a conversation with June that must be gentle and true. It will also bring an unsent email in Derek's drafts folder, a moment where the men decide whether to bow to accountability or to hide behind the ease of deniability. Tonight, though, as Hunter wipes the dinner table clean and puts June's volcano model on top of the microwave for safekeeping, he feels the soft tug of something that might be called hope. It is not a cinematic miracle. It is a steady, human thing. A man who can sign. A woman who can read lips and laugh without sound. A child who insists on volcanoes and love. The camera has recorded it all, but the story that will matter will be the one lived beyond the footage. He turns out the kitchen light and for a moment stands in the doorway, listening to the city breathe. The next moves are not his alone, but if tonight proved anything, it proved that dignity, when chosen, can reroute an evening, can reroute lives. It proved that a blind date arranged to humiliate can become the place where two people choose to be human instead of a punchline. Quick, where are you watching from tonight? Morning arrives the way it always does, slow, ordinary, insistently. Hunter wakes to the small domestic sounds of his apartment, the kettle's whisper, June's feet padding to the kitchen, the cat batting at a shoelace. And with it comes the practical work of unspooling what happened. He writes a concise email to HR. He texts a line to the CFO. Nothing theatrical, just the facts and his request for a conversation. He does not want a spectacle. He wants responsibility. There is a steadiness to his voice that depends on years of being someone other people rely on. Across town, Megan sits on her apartment steps and looks at her phone until the sleep fog clears. Hurt is a slow, exacting thing. She scrolls through the invisible timeline of the night, the laughter that was not hers to give, the sudden tilt of anyone's gaze that said, "This is entertainment." She signs a short sentence into her notes app for herself, the familiar habit of shaping thoughts into fingers. Signs, "They lied." Her jaw tightens. For a time, she is quiet with a grief that is not his and not hers. And then she writes Hunter back, because the life she wants is honest. Her reply is unadorned. "Thank you for stopping it." When Hunter arrives at work later that morning, the office smells of burnt coffee and awkwardness. The three men are waiting in the break room. Their faces are gray. Derek's mouth keeps forming apologies like someone learning to speak another language. Greg looks like he has aged a calendar year in one night. Tim fidgets, a man whose nerves have become visible. The CFO, who had been looped in by someone who realized this might not be a simple HR call, walks in with a folder and the slow, careful face of a person weighing company integrity. Hunter does not want revenge. He wants an acknowledgement and, crucially, an end to this practice. He tells the story succinctly: what happened, how they recorded without consent, how they meant to humiliate, how he and Megan were placed in the center of it. He requests that the footage be deleted and that those responsible be held accountable in a way that fosters learning rather than spectacle. The company responds. It is not the sort of swift, cinematic justice that fills headlines. It is a series of reasonable steps. The manner suspended, pending an internal review. HR develops a sensitivity training module focused on consent and disability awareness. The CFO schedules a town hall conversation about workplace culture. These are not miraculous punishments. They are consequences, slow, administrative, and designed to prevent repetition. The men will have to explain what they did and why, and then listen to the people they hurt. They will have to sit, unblinking, in rooms where the moral cost of their joke is spelled out in other people's words. At their first meeting with Hunter and Megan, the tone is raw. Greg reads a prepared statement that trembles at the edges. Derek stumbles through a confession that sounds like a child naming a broken vase. Tinham apologizes in a voice that suggests he is learning how to be accountable. Megan listens. Her face is a ledger of emotion. Hurt, yes, but also measured judgment. She asks questions in a direct, exact way. Why? Who else knew? How will you make sure this never happens to someone else? Her hands are steady when she signs. Each question is a test, not of their sincerity, but of their capacity to understand harm. There's a scene when Derek's eyes well. He had imagined this would be a laugh, and instead sits in a room learning the word consent in a way he cannot unhear. He offers a real apology, not because he wants the discomfort to stop, but because he wants to start making amends. Hunter listens and, when it is necessary, reminds them that apology must be followed by changed behavior. He does not play the martyr. He bears his grief and his anger with a quiet discipline that makes his points land. The CFO promises follow-through. HR promises training. The men promise to learn. Megan chooses how to be present in those conversations on her terms. She does not want to be a spectacle in the meeting, just as she did not want to be a spectacle in the restaurant. Her participation is thoughtful. She suggests language for the sensitivity training and asks to review the footage before it is destroyed, if it must be looked at all, so that she can ensure her own dignity is respected in how anything is discussed. She does not demand grand gestures. She demands respect. Outside the formal wound care of HR, something tender unspools in a quieter register. Megan and Hunter agree to meet again. This time, planned and without the shadow of hidden cameras. They choose a neutral park bench on a Sunday afternoon, a place where June can run and the river can be a distant soundtrack rather than a stage light. Hunter brings June with him because he wants to be honest about the life that would be shared. He wants the two most important people he knows to meet without pretense. June appears like a small comet, blonde hair in a messy ponytail, backpack slung over one shoulder, the volcano model clutched like a sacred text. She has already practiced a few signs in the mirror, lessons she learned from watching her father sign bedtime phrases. When Megan kneels down to June's height and pulls her fingers into a playful mock explosion sign, hands cupped and flicked, June's face lights. The way Megan's hands shape the sign, palms cupped, a small shudder of fingers, eyes wide, invites a child into language as if it were a secret game. June copies it exactly, cheeks flush with the pride of one who can do something grown-ups admire. The first handshake between two potential family members is a small, silly act, and it is perfect. At home, small domestic lessons accumulate like coins in a jar. Megan shows June a sign for book, palms open, thumbs tucked. June replicates it and then improvises a version that involves a dramatic eyebrow raise that makes them both laugh. They cook pancakes together a week later, 3 adults in a small kitchen. Megan's sleeves rolled up, Hunter passing a spatula, June sprinkling in cinnamon with theatrical extravagance. The cat winds around Megan's legs like a feline cosigner. The apron strings smell faintly of lemon oil and home. Megan signs a story about a childhood library and the way a librarian taught her to steal minutes between shelves. Hunter listens and then signs the way his mother used to teach him the names of cookies, the soft angles of her fingers tracing recipes as if they were prayers. Grief sits in the room like a respectful guest. No one center stage, but it does not dominate. Megan moves slowly into their life, not as a savior, not as an experiment, but as someone who chooses this particular family with deliberate affection. She teaches June a sign that is private between them, a little twist of the wrist that means silly, a gesture they use when the volcano erupts into too much syrup. Hunter watches, sometimes a silent participant, sometimes an interjecting laugh. Their household rituals grow. Saturday sketchbooks, Tuesday pizza nights, a chore chart with stickers that are mercilessly applied. They argue about toothpaste caps and lose arguments about whose turn to do dishes. All of it is ordinary and therefore miraculous in its own small ways. Months pass and the aftermath at the office settles into a steady rhythm. The men do their training and show up to the town hall with notes and apologies. They speak awkwardly about empathy. The CFO recommends a public statement about consent and dignity in the workplace. It is not the point of the story. Policy changes rarely are. But it matters. It matters because the ripples of a single bad joke can be redirected into a program that keeps others from being harmed. Hunter is invited to speak at the town hall not as an accuser, but as a voice for the way workplaces should treat people with dignity. He speaks plainly about consent, about disability awareness, about how the temptation to laugh at others cannot be allowed to define a company. The room listens. There are still uneasy faces. Change is incremental. But accountability has a texture now. Work life grows steady for Hunter. He does not chase public recognition. Yet recognition finds him in small ways. A client thanks him for the calm he brings. A supervisor notes his leadership in a quarterly review, not as theater, but as quiet evidence. He had handled a fraught situation, protecting a coworker, managing a company crisis with thought and care. Those marks matter in the small economy of steady competence. Later that year, a promotion offers itself, not as a consolation, but as a practical alignment of responsibilities to the man who has already been doing the work. Hunter accepts with the same measured steadiness that carried him through the night of the date. It is an incidental victory, the kind that says, this man's daily faithfulness is noticed. Between the pragmatic tidying of work and the tender building of home, there is one scene that feels like a hinge. It is a quiet afternoon. Megan and Hunter on the couch, elbows touching. June brushing crayon dust into patterns on her knees. A soft knock on the door. A friend dropping off extra cookies. A neighbor with a misdelivered package. The ordinary disruptions of urban life. Hunter looks at Megan and feels the weight of small decisions coalesce into something larger. He thinks about how the night at the Riverside Grill started as a trap and became a gentle folding in of lives. He remembers June's sign, the way the child had tapped his wrist and told him to be safe. He thinks about promises, the kind parents keep for children, the kind lovers whisper in the dark. He begins to plan, not with grand gestures, with careful craftsmanship. He asks June, in a conversation the two of them have like co-conspirators, to help. He does not make a spectacle of secrecy. Instead, he folds June into the plan as he would a letter, with care and respect. They decide to return to the Riverside Grill, not for the cameras, but because the table is the place where a choice was made and then remade. It is the right place for an ending that is also a beginning. The day of the proposal is lit like a small gift. The restaurant seems, in the slow turning of hours, to know how to hold ceremony without pomp. Hunter asks for the same corner booth, the one that once housed wrong intentions, now reclaimed for love. And the staff, having watched some of this story's softer beats, obliges with a quiet smile. Hunter carries a small velvet box in his pocket, its edges worn because his fingers have been shifting it around for hours. He has rehearsed nothing because the authenticity of the moment matters more than a well-delivered line. June is the essential accomplice. She has negotiated cookie bribes and extra screen time in exchange for cooperation. Her job is to bring a volcano model that hides a little secret, a tiny compartment under the base where a ring might be nested. They practice the handoff in the living room that morning. June's hands sticky with jam, Megan crouched to tie a shoe, Hunter holding the volcano like it contains treasure. June's eyes are alight with the fun of a plan that is both solemn and ridiculous. She signs at Megan in the car on the way over, checking instructions like a seasoned director. Signs: when Dad gives the signal, you make the explosion. Not loud, real. The restaurant has a hush to it that is neither awkward nor staged. Hunter sits and waits, palms folded like a man at prayer. He watches Megan cross the room and sit across from him. She is wearing the same muted green jacket that first night. Small details matter in a memory. June is perched at his side, hand warm in his. Hunter takes a breath and, with his hands that have told 1,000 small truths, he signs the small phrase. The phrase, "Will you marry us?" The phrase is both an invitation and an offering, a sentence that names a family they hope to be. Megan's hands pause as if time is a substance she can touch. Her face bends through a dozen expressions. Surprise, delight, a flash of tears that she presses down because she is composed by practice. She signs back, slow and absolute. Signs, yes, yes. Her hands close in a little fist to her chest, and then open, spreading like a small dawn. She pulls out her hands and takes his, the contact saying what words cannot quite say. June erupts in the prearranged small drama. She lifts the volcano, gives it a tiny shake, and opens the hidden compartment. The ring glints like a secret star. Hunter slides it from its hiding place, palms trembling only a little, and fits it onto Megan's finger. The restaurant breathes. For a moment, the people who eat and talk around them become witnesses to something quiet and human and old as vows. The corner booth is empty. The cameras that once promised humiliation are no longer relevant. There is only the sound of chairs shifting and a low, spontaneous applause that ripples from table to table. Megan's face is wet with tenderness. She signs a sentence that folds into the room like a benediction. Signs, "Thank you for choosing dignity." Hunter cannot speak the way a protest might demand, but he nods and then says aloud, because love is also about voice, "I choose you, all of you, the loud parts, the quiet parts, the sticky pancakes." They take photographs on a phone handed to them by a waiter who has watched the arc and is happy to be part of the ending. June poses with an over-the-top eruption sign, her grin wide and wild. The city hums beyond the windows, indifferent and kind. In the weeks that follow, the life they build is not immune to the world's practicalities. There are still HR follow-ups. The men who started the prank finish their training and, through ongoing work, show small signs of change. They apologize publicly at the town hall and privately to Megan. The CFO circulates a memo about consent. The footage is deleted according to a plan that respects Megan's dignity and limits its circulation. These are not cinematic absolutes, They are procedural steps that keep harm from being repeated. At home, the small domestic rituals continue to be the scaffolding of their family. They marry in a modest ceremony by the river. No viral flash, no sensational cameras. Just friends, close colleagues, Hunter's mother's old scarf repurposed into a napkin ring, and a small sign language blessing Megan's friends offer in their circle. June leads a bubble-blowing procession, and then, with the solemnness of a minister, signs a short vow she invents on the spot. "I promise to teach the volcano manners." Everyone laughs, and the laughter is the kind that seals things. 6 months later, the apartment holds the evidence of their life. A new set of mugs with Dad and Mama initials. A shelf of June's drawings where volcano craters proliferate like badges. A small stack of freelance invoices that prove Megan's work is both real and respected. There is an independence to their happiness. It is not the high drama of movies, but the slow, steady accumulation of days in which affection is practiced. There is a simple morning when Hunter kisses Megan goodbye as she leaves for a meeting. June stands on the kitchen stool, signing a long list of things that must be done before school. Pack a snack, water the fern, tell the cat to be calm. The mittens she signs for are an improvised thing that makes them both giggle. Megan signs back a word that has been private between the three of them since the first weekend: family. The word sits like a warm rock in the center of the day. Occasionally, the story resurfaces in the office. People who once clicked for the sensational begin to ask questions about inclusion, about how to be better. The men who started the prank, Derek, Greg, Tim, are not cast into villainy forever. They are admonished, they are taught, and slowly, in small ways, they change. That is the hard, honest arc of accountability. Not to erase mistakes, but to insist they be met with repair. Megan's name is spoken without the tinge of spectacle. She gives a lecture to a volunteer class on disability representation that is sharp, witty, and full of clear, practical guidance. She is offered more freelance work because people take her seriously as a writer, not as a cause. There are nights when grief still visits Hunter in the shape of a forgotten habit, an empty side of the bed, a playlist that skips to a song that used to mean something only to him. He carries those small absences like a pencil tucked behind his ear. But they are not the whole of him. He is loved by a woman who shines like sunlight, and by a daughter who erupts a volcano every other day. The tenderness they have is not the erasure of loss, but the expansion of life around it. The story we first encountered as a sting becomes, for those involved, a long lesson in dignity. It teaches the men in the corner booth that the impulse to laugh at others has real consequences. It teaches Hunter that protection can be public and ordinary. It teaches Megan that a life with others can be chosen and not simply endured. Most of all, it teaches June that families arrive in various languages and that the ability to sign is a bridge, not a spectacle. On an ordinary evening, the three of them sit on the couch and watch a movie, volume low because some parts are captioned and others are not. Hunter's hand finds Megan's and June's, a small chain of warmth. They do not talk about how the night began as a deception. They talk instead about the people who taught them to be kind along the way. The teacher who corrected a sign with patience, the waiter who handed over a camera phone with a smile during the proposal, the CFO who found the courage to listen. The camera lights that once blinked behind a fern have no place in this life. The footage that might have been used to humiliate lies in a secured deletion lock. What remains is the memory of hands that learned to speak and of a small child who insists that every pancake be a volcano. If you asked any of them what the turning point was, they would each point to a different moment. Hunter would say it was the choice to walk back to the men and stop the joke. Megan would say it was the second meeting in the park when June signed an eruption and her chest unclenched. June would say it was the first time Megan taught her a sign that made her feel clever. The truth is that all those moments braided together to change a night that might have been cruel into a lifelong tenderness. 6 months, then a year. Quiet holidays, small spats over toothpaste caps, a shared garden of herbs on the windowsill. Once, on a rainy afternoon, Hunter finds Megan asleep at the kitchen table with a laptop open to an article she's been refining. He traces the line of her jaw and thinks of the sequence of choices that got them here. He slides a coffee across the table and signs playfully, "Still up for volcano lessons?" She opens one eye and signs back, all mischief and warmth. "Always." The story that began as a viral setup ends, if an ending can be an ongoing thing, with an ordinary family choosing each other daily. It is the kind of tearjerker that makes you cry not because of melodrama, but because of the steady, human ache of choosing dignity over spectacle, care over cruelty, love over fear. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear how small acts of dignity can reroute a life. If you want more stories like this, please like and subscribe.